Hi BookTube, it's Amy, and it's time for my Friday reads. I've only read just a couple of books in the past 2 weeks actually. I spent a long time, almost an entire week, reading through Thomas Harris's novel Hannibal. I was just not in a ambitious reading mood, and so I was reading quite slowly, wasn't reading on the bus, wasn't really reading at my lunch breaks. I was going out to movies and watching Netflix instead, but I greatly enjoyed Hannibal. Now, it's what I would call a vastly different novel from Red Dragon or The Silence of the Lambs. It does not follow the same formula. You do not get Jack Crawford pulling someone in to hunt for a serial killer and Hannibal Lecter sort of assisting / antagonizing our protagonist. Instead, this is all about Hannibal Lecter, and it's all about Clarice Starling, and all about how their paths intersect again. And I don't want to give away the ending of the novel, but it was incredibly creepy, incredibly disturbing, and it was everything that I needed it to be, because I don't think it could have ended any other way and would have satisfied me. So we have Hannibal, who at the end of The Silence of the Lambs escaped from police custody and disappeared, and we meet him again when he is in Europe, and Clarice Starling is under investigation at work for a completely unrelated case, but she receives a letter from Hannibal expressing his condolences, and she is hot on his trail again, doing everything she can to try to catch him. A third party is interested in catching Hannibal, not to turn him in or claim reward money, but to torture him and kill him for revenge. And Clarice Starling inadvertently ends up stuck kind of in between Hannibal and this third party, and ends up intervening in a way that I'm not going to tell you because that would spoil it. But there is some really creepy stuff in here, such as, I'm going to call them the bad guys, even though the lines are really blurred in this novel. There are some definite bad guys that you can pick out, and they are essentially training pigs to eat live human beings. And that's what they have planned for Hannibal when they catch him. So that is quite creepy, especially because pigs are usually quite gentle creatures, although they will eat human remains. I think you'd have to go to great lengths to train them to eat live humans. So that was creepy, quite disturbing, but quite good in the end. So I read that. And then I ended up picking up on Tuesday evening Galothiga Falls by Frank D. Felitta. And this is one of the horror novels that I showed in my haul a couple of weeks ago. And it's not my favorite that I've read, but still it was quite entertaining. It has a very religious bent to it. It's sort of the Catholic Church horror genre. So there's this creepy old church just outside of Boston, and a number of priests have died there over the years, and it appears to be possessed. And so this priest sets out to go and exorcise the place at the same time that these scientists from Harvard show up, and with all their electronic equipment, and are trying to, find scientific explanations for these paranormal experiences. And of course they get drawn into some horrific and devilish happenings with the priest who's there. And it really does not have the best ending. I think some people, at least when I was reading reviews on Goodreads, some people find this one a little bit too focused on religion, on the Catholic Church, on theology, and maybe it's because I I didn't grow up Catholic, but I grew up Lutheran, maybe because I'm sort of familiar with that atmosphere, that I find it so satisfying to have it perverted, so to speak, in a horror novel. So this was reasonably good. And then today I decided to read a novel that I had picked up at Chapters 2 weekends ago, and that is Looker by Laura Sims. This is one that I had never heard of, but it was published this year in 2019. And I don't know really how big of a reach it has. Have you heard of this one? If you've heard of this one, let me know. But I picked it off of the random table, and I picked it up and I read it, and I really, really enjoyed it today. Started it on the bus, finished it before the day was out, and it is about a woman who appears to be maybe early middle age. She's not young, but she's not really old yet. Her husband has recently left her. She has been struggling with infertility. She and her husband tried for quite a long time, years and years, to become pregnant and have a baby. Didn't work out for them for unknown reasons. At the beginning of the novel, she states that her husband has left her. It's been, I think, 6 weeks, and she is she's a professor, but she is absolutely obsessed with a woman that she just refers to as the actress. We never actually learn the actress's name. She is just this woman who lives across the street, who appears to have the perfect life, the perfect children. And she's been in some movies. She's described as having her face, plastered on the side of a bus, but she's not Audrey Hepburn. She's not Marilyn Monroe. She's not someone like that. But she is semi well known, and she's not considered a very serious actress either. But our main character is obsessed with her, obsessed to the point of whenever this woman puts something out at the curb to get rid of, she goes and snatches it up and hides it in her house. She ends up stealing a children's bike belonging to, I believe, the daughter in the family. This bicycle is left on the lawn. She sneaks out at 2 a.m. and smuggles this thing into her house just because, she's got to have another piece of this actress. And she is essentially stalking her, and she doesn't think that anyone else is noticing her, but as you read on, you slowly see just how much this obsession has taken over her life. It's hinted that that could be the reason that her marriage broke up. It's hinted that it is ruining her career, and that she's becoming unhinged even in the eyes of her neighbors, who seem to realize this obsession. It was interesting too, I don't know if the author intended it, but she lives in a brownstone in New York, and her ex-husband's cat is literally named Cat, or the cat, and it lives in the house. And for some reason, in the opening pages, I'm getting an actress in New York City living in a brownstone, and there's a cat, and suddenly I'm thinking Breakfast at Tiffany. So it's almost as if for our protagonist, for our main character, this actress is kind of the reincarnation of the Audrey Hepburn or the Holly Golightly figure, because Breakfast at Tiffany's Holly Golightly lived in a brownstone. Audrey Hepburn was, of course, an actress. And she had a cat who she just referred to as Cat. And it seems awful coincidental that all those things would set off the red lights in my mind and remind me of that. And so it sets out the novel in a certain flavor right from the start. And of course we get this absolutely interesting, unreliable narrator with a beautiful way of talking, of describing things. And I did flag some quotes in here that I do want to talk about, but I think I'm going to save those for a potential review that I'm planning to do of this novel, so I'll set this aside for now. But there's that. I read that. In terms of my reading on Friday and moving into the weekend, I do have some perspective novels here. One arrived in the mail today, and I don't know anything about it other than the title and the cover, and it's called Lois Lane, Lesbian Secretary by Monica Nolan. And this is something that was published in the mid-2000s, I believe. Just a random suggestion on Amazon, and so I said, why not? I'll let you know some more about this and whether it's any good, probably in my next Friday reads. In addition to that, I have a book that arrived a couple days ago that I ordered online, and it's Anne Aldrich's We Too Must Love. This is another lesbian pulp novel, and I believe this one is from, let's just double check. It's very fragile. From 1958. This is the third printing from 1963, and it is a little bit chewed away at by insects or something. But it was a reasonably cheap copy, and I really wanted an original paperback from the 50s or 60s rather than the little bit ugly reprint that I saw. So this doesn't really tell you much about the novel, rather it tells you about the author and about her previous novel, We Walk Alone. So this is going to be a bit of a surprise in terms of what it's about, but I'll let you know in the future whether this was any good. And I've got one more here that is also something I picked up at Chapters 2 weekends ago when I got Looker. And this is called A Noise Downstairs by Linwood Barclay. And it is about a college professor whose typewriter seems to come to life and is typing on its own. That's the impression I get. From the back, I get the impression that it's going to be potentially a horror novel or a thriller of some sort. And I do like that sort of thing, so it sounded good to me. And this is a fairly recent publication as well, 2018. Published by NJSB Entertainment Incorporated, which I don't think I've heard of. This is published in Canada by Doubleday Canada. Although the funny thing is that it's still printed and bound in the US. So even though it's published by a Canadian publishing company, it was printed and bound and essentially produced in the United States and then shipped back to Canada. So it's quite likely that the actual type with the Canadian spellings was created in Canada, and then they sent everything across the border, and they printed up the books and then sent them back to us, which is why we need excellent free trade agreements, but that's besides the point here. So this is what I'm up to in my reading over the weekend. Let me know what you're reading down below in the comments, and I hope you enjoy your weekend.